Before we begin, in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining children under the age of 13, violating the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies meant to dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. This video is not made for kids. It is not targeted at kids. It is not advertising to kids. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. And happy May 4th, Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. With the lighting, you can't really see it. This is yellow, by the way. I love yellow lightsabers. I also don't have sound, because when I bought this, sound cost extra. Way more extra than I was willing to pay. Anyway, because it's Star Wars Day, well actually let me start that over. I love Star Wars. I've loved it ever since I was a kid. My dad introduced me to it when I was 3. You know, I've been a fan for most of my life. And I thought today I would do my own ranking of the movies. Yes, I put this off for a long time, but that's because there was a movie I hadn't seen, and I didn't get the chance to see until it came out. You know, for as long as I've been alive, I was born in 94, me and my dad have seen every Star Wars movie released in theaters, save for 2. So yeah, anyway, first of all, pray for me because I'm a guy talking about Star Wars on the internet. Kind of a hot button issue. But anyway, I'm going to be ranking all 12 theatrically released Star Wars movies. Episodes 1 through 9, the Skywalker Saga, and then the 3 anthology movies. You know how this works. Everything's my opinion. Feel free to agree or disagree. I love debate and I love conversation. You know how this works, so I'm going to jump right into it. But real quick, if you hear any background noise, it's because I have my window open and my fan running. Because we're getting summer weather now. And right as I say that, a truck starts up. I hope that's not going to be a thing. Anyway, where I live, we only get winter and summer. Spring and fall do not exist. So I have my window open and my fan on because it gets hot. And I don't want to sit here doing this boiling in my own skin. Anyway, 12 movies. We have a lot to go through. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. And starting us off, number 12, my least favorite Star Wars movie, The Clone Wars. This was the pilot to the Clone Wars animated series, and yeah, this, I'm pretty sure, was only released theatrically as an advertising gimmick for the series. Because that's one of my biggest complaints about the Clone Wars. This should not have been theatrically released. And I think because it was, the problems it has are a lot more noticeable. Like, one of the big ones is, you know, when you have the expanded universe, you can really do anything with Star Wars. You can kind of do almost any story. But when you do a theatrical Star Wars movie, it almost always has to be an epic. You know, the hero's journey, you know, like the Greek epic, like the Odyssey. Star Wars movies always kind of have to be an epic. And that's one of the Clone Wars' biggest problems. It tries to tell an epic story, and it just fails on every level. You know, it's very underwhelming. It's sort of anticlimactic in that regard. The performances are really flat. Like, a lot of these actors throughout the series would be much better. James Arnold Taylor, Matt Lanter, Ashley Eckstein, you know, everyone. But here, they're just kind of flat. Also, this movie is really empty. Like, you know, outside of the big battle scenes, you have the characters in these huge set pieces. You know, the deserts of Tatooine, Jabba's palace, Christophsis, where the movie starts, that one planet whose name I'm forgetting. You have these huge sets, and you have like 3 or 4 characters in a scene at one time. It feels really empty. And yeah, my recommendation for this would be, there's an episode in, I forget if it's season 1 or season 2. I know it's one of the early seasons. And that episode is the prelude to the movie. If you want to watch Clone Wars, start with the series, start season 1, episode 1, and then watch the movie after that episode. Number 11, Solo, a Star Wars story. A movie so bad that it killed the rest of the A Star Wars Story anthology series. This is a really bland, dull movie, and I think part of it is because I never cared for Han Solo. I never hated him, I never disliked him, I just didn't care about him. You know, my favorite protagonists were Luke or Leia. Han was just there. I never felt strongly for him. So already this movie has that working against it. I think Ron Howard was the wrong choice to do a Star Wars movie because this movie was originally going to be done by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. But for one reason or another, I've heard several conflicting accounts, so I'm just going to leave it at that. They parted ways with the project, and Lucasfilm brought on Ron Howard to finish it. And Ron Howard is like Chris Columbus. You don't hire him to be the brave, bold, new, experimental director. You hire him because he's the safe choice. The script you give him is the movie you're gonna get. And this movie comes across as being really safe. I mean, the one thing I'll give it credit for is, you know, with Clone Wars, I just mentioned how Star Wars movies are epics, and Clone Wars fails at trying to be one. Solo knows it's not an epic, and it never tries to be one. It's a heist movie, and it knows it. So I do respect it for at least knowing what it is. But yeah, other than that, it's just so bland. It's so boring. It's really unoriginal, and most of the performances are flat. Alden Ehrenreich, I think is how you say his name. I'm sorry, I don't know how you pronounce it. He's serviceable as Han Solo. He's fine, but he gives the bare minimum. Woody Harrelson and Paul Bettany are trying so hard, but you can tell the material just isn't good. Emilia Clarke is awful. Like, she is so bad. She is so flat and emotionless. And, like, really the only one I liked was Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. He was the saving grace of this movie. And he's barely in it. But yeah, as someone who's been a Star Wars fan all their life, it should speak volumes that Solo and the Clone Wars are the only movies... There we go. Are the only movies I don't own physically. Number 10. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I kind of just want to ghost over this one because really, what can I say about Attack of the Clones that hasn't already been said by tons of other people, you know? All of the actors are flatly directed. The dialogue is terrible. I don't like sand. George Lucas lets his action sequences go on for way too long. Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen have absolutely no chemistry together. You know, they have about as much chemistry as any other of the other elements in a noble gas. That joke was funnier in my head. Please ignore it. And where else? Where else can I go from? Like I said, where else can I go from there? You know, or it's so boring. Most of the great stuff, most of the good stuff, the stuff I do like about Attack of the Clones, doesn't happen until the third act. Like I said, the actors are really flat and really stiff. The only actors who manage to come out in any way unscathed and give decent performances are Ian McDiarmid, Ewan McGregor, and Christopher Lee. Actually, this film is what introduced me to Christopher Lee, so I do like it for that, but yeah, I just... everything everyone says about how reviled this movie is absolutely true. Number 9. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Again, like Attack of the Clones, this one has been talked to death about all the problems with it, so really, what can I add to this, Like I said, with Attack of the Clones, it becomes really evident with the pod race here, with the pod race sequence here. George Lucas lets his action sequences go on way longer than they need to be. They go on long enough and you get the point, and then Lucas keeps them going 10 minutes longer. Over the years, I've come to appreciate Attack of the Clones for what it is. Like I said, this came out in 99, so I imagine the production schedule was around 97, 98. I should have done research, but yeah. So I've come to appreciate Attack of the Clones for the Phantom Menace for what it is. It is a schlocky 90s action movie, and it plays like one. And, it's the kind of movie where if you turn your brain off, you can enjoy. But yeah, here we see the starting points for a lot of the problems Lucas has as a filmmaker and a writer. And yeah, they're thinking about it lately. There is one thing that really destroys this movie for me, and really almost kind of destroys most of the prequels for me. That exchange between Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin's mother, Shmi Skywalker. Who was the father? There was no father. Yeah, Anakin Skywalker is so important, he is literally Jesus. And I don't care what you say about the sequels, that one scene should show you just how really, really bad the prequels are. Well, mostly are. We'll get there. Number 8. Episode 9. The Rise of Skywalker. This isn't the worst Star Wars movie. Trust me, we just covered what was the worst. But this is the most frustrating. Because the sequel trilogy was supposed to be done like the original trilogy. A different writer and director would do each movie. So J.J. Abrams did The Force Awakens. Rian Johnson did The Last Jedi. And then Colin Trevorrow, the guy who did the Jurassic World movies, was supposed to do Episode 9. However, like Phil Lord and Chris Miller with Solo, there were issues with the production of Episode 9, and Trevorrow left. Again, like Lord and Miller, I've also heard many conflicting accounts, so I'm just going to leave it as ambiguous as I did. So yeah, what Lucasfilm brought back J.J. Abrams to finish this movie, but here's the thing. They said, you got to write a new script, film a completely new movie, but we're not changing the release date. We're not delaying this movie. So the time you have left, you have to use. And I think the rushed production schedule is one of this movie's biggest problems. Because when you watch it, yeah, it feels like such a rush job. I think had the release been delayed and Abrams had the time to properly write, direct, and edit a movie, it would have come out much better. Then again, this is J.J. Abrams, America's Stephen Moffat, so given his absolute addiction to mystery boxes, it may have also come out just as terrible. Well, not terrible, just as nonsensical and frustrating. There's a lot about this movie I like, but so much of it is frustrating. Character development is completely ignored. Like Rey in The Force Awakens. She wanted to get back to Jakku. She was worried her parents would come back for her. She was worried about, she wanted to know who she was. The Last Jedi. Rey got closure on that part of her life. It didn't matter who she was or where she came from. All that mattered is the kind of woman she made herself to be. Rise of Skywalker. Suddenly she cares again. Or, Kylo Ren. He was obsessed with Darth Vader in The Force Awakens. He idolized him. The Last Jedi. He learned to move past that. Rise of Skywalker. He digs out Vader's helmet again and repairs his mask, undoing all the development he made. And, like I said, the movie even ignores its own plot points, or makes them completely pointless, like the main cast is trying to find the planet Exegol, where Palpatine is, and for as little screen time as he has, Ian McDiarmid is once again great. But yeah, they find a map to Exegol, it gets destroyed, and this new droid they've been traveling with is suddenly like, oh, I've known the way there the entire time. Making everything the main heroes just went through completely pointless. Or, C-3PO. He could decipher the meaning of where to find the map, but because his programming forbids him from translating Sith writings. So they have to wipe his memory so he can translate it. But then R2 has a backup of his memory, once again making his sacrifice completely pointless. And the movie makes a lot of these decisions, and, that's just where I'm going to leave. And also the other thing is, each of the sequel movies, and this is where I'll end, was supposed to be the old guard passing the torch to the next generation. You know, with The Force Awakens, it was Han. With The Last Jedi, it was Luke. And with Episode 9, either Trevorrow's or The Rise of Skywalker, it was supposed to be Leia's movie. But we unfortunately lost Carrie Fisher. But Episode 9 still tries to make it Leia's movie, and that, I think, was a huge mistake. I mean, like I said, if I could sum The Rise of Skywalker up in one word, it's frustrating. Number 7. Coincidentally enough, Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Ultimately, I just found this movie very dull. When I was originally plotting out my ranking, I couldn't decide between what would be number 7 and number 8. For the longest time, The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker were sort of at a tie. The Force Awakens just edges it out because it's much more cohesive than The Rise of Skywalker. Again, and one other thing, actually I'll hold off on that. Good performances in this movie. Adam Driver is okay. I think in the sequel trilogy, this is his weakest performance. Like I said, most of them are okay. Harrison Ford is actually really good. Like, if you've watched Harrison Ford recently in the movies he's in, he kind of just sleepwalks through a role. You know, it's like, I'm Harrison Ford, and that's all you need. But here, there was so much effort in his performance, and it was really heartfelt. It was really good. But, yeah, one of my problems is fan service in storytelling in movies. Like, if you can make the fan service have a point, that's great. That works out. You know, like the Doctor Who episode, School Reunion. That episode brought back Sarah Jane, and K9, which would have been fan service, which is fan service, obviously, but it's woven into the plot really well. There's a point to it being there. What I hate is fan service just for the sake of fan service, and that's what The Force Awakens does. A lot. Like, every time something is brought up from the original trilogy, the movie stops. Completely. You know, like, in the Millennium Falcon, I think it was Finn finds the training remote from A New Hope, and the movie stops to focus on it. And, you know, like I said, it's just ultimately, the pacing is just a little too slow. It's kind of a dull movie. Number 6, gonna be a little controversial here, Episode 4, A New Hope. This one, when I watch Star Wars, this is kind of one of the ones I revisit the least. And it's kind of because of the later movies. And here's what I mean by that. Like, you have Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And when you see how how expansive those movies are, how big those movies are, how grandiose they are, how they tell the story, and then when you watch them again and go back to A New Hope is a really underwhelming, which, you know, understandable, makes a lot of sense. A New Hope had a really small budget, and that one was made in the 70s, where film technology wasn't as advanced and was very different compared to The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which obviously had bigger budgets and were made in the 80s when different technology was available. But then there's the prequels. Like I said, in the original trilogy, George Lucas only had complete control over A New Hope. You know, which is probably why every time he re-released them, A New Hope was the one that was changed the most. You know, starting with the special editions onward. And I'm not going to get into that. Here's the thing. When I first saw Star Wars, because I was born in 94, the special editions were what I saw. So, some of the changes I have issues with, but most of them I just don't care. But anyway, as I was saying, A New Hope is the only movie in the original trilogy George Lucas had complete control over. Want to know what else he had complete control over? The prequels. And, you know, everyone talks about the prequels, obviously, and all the faults of them. And when you watch the prequels and go back and watch A New Hope, George Lucas's faults as a writer and a director are really visible in that movie. And yeah, that's really just it. The later movies kind of made A New Hope, in hindsight, very underwhelming. There's really not anything more to say to that. Number 5, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Now, when this movie came out, everyone loved it. I was one of them. I thought it was great. And then I watched it again recently, and not so much. It's got the same problem as Attack of the Clones. The first two-thirds of it are really dull, and most of the best stuff happens in the third act, and I think that's why everyone likes it, because of the third act, which admittedly is amazing. But like I said, those first those first two-thirds are so dull. They're such a slogfest. The characters are flat. I don't like any of them. The characters are flat. I don't like any of them except for the performances. Like, just one as an example. Chirrut. I don't like Chirrut because Chirrut is a good character. I like Chirrut because Chirrut is played by Donnie Yen, and I like Donnie Yen. Or, oh shoot, what's his name? Which I'll get into that. This one has a really great cast, but a lot of them aren't utilized well. Felicia Day. Shoot, was that her name? I think it was. I may be thinking of I may be confusing her with someone else. Mads Mikkelsen, who I've always enjoyed, and he's trying so hard, you can tell, but again, this script gives him nothing to work with. Ben Mendelsohn is great, but yeah, like I said, it's a better version of Attack of the Clones. Dull two-thirds, and then a great third act. Number 4, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Like A New Hope, this is one of the ones I revisit the least, but that's more so because I know this one so well, and it's much more enjoyable, let's be honest. Like, this one introduces Emperor Palpatine, one of the greatest cinematic villains of all time. There's not really a lot to talk about, and, I could just gush about it, but I don't even know where I want to go. This movie has this movie has a lot of plot threads to wrap up, and it does ghost over them kind of fast. Like Yoda's death happens really fast. The revelation that Luke has a twin sister, Leia, is handled really fast, and just like I said, a lot of these Han's debt to Jabba the Hutt, that's the first third of the movie, and thinking about it, that's kind of disjointed from the rest of the movie. It's here's the thing, I'm struggling with this one because it's one I like, and I don't really have a lot to say. I mean, it's number 4. You should know. That should tell you everything you need to know. I'm sorry. I wish I could. I can't put my thoughts on this one into words, and I hope you'll forgive me. Oh, another coincidence. Number 3, Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. This one might be the most blinded by nostalgia choice, because as a kid, or I guess technically as a teenager, I don't remember, Revenge of the Sith was my favorite movie. It still has a lot of the problems of the other prequels, mainly the big one being George Lucas lets his action sequences go on way longer than they should, or way longer than they need to be. Especially that final duel, that is really overblown. But this one strikes me as the most improved. Just to make another Doctor Who comparison, this one, it feels like Series 10. It feels like, in both those instances, George Lucas and Stephen Moffat actually listened to the criticisms they received for their past work and strove to work on them. Strove to improve upon them. Sure, there's a slip up here and there, but the end result is a vast improvement over what came before it. Also, my favorite part of any Star Wars movie is the lightsaber duel, and just for sheer quantity alone, this movie easily tops out all the rest. And the lightsaber duels, except for that final one, I do not like that one at all. Like I said, it's drags on so long and it's really overblown. But most of the other ones are great. And my favorite lightsaber duel in the entire series, Mace Windu versus Darth Sidious, is in this movie. Again, not really much I have to say here. You know, believe it or not, there was a time when you could have a difference of opinion and everyone would be fine with that. You know, you could say, I disagree, this is how I feel, and you could still be respectful about it, still have an agreement about it, and move on and everyone would be fine. Does anyone else remember that? I bring it up because of what's coming up. Number 2, Episode 8, The Last Jedi. I mean, you know, when I first saw The Last Jedi, I was just kind of mixed on it. But then I watched it again, and then I watched it again, and I've really come to like it. It's amazing. And part of it boils down to, because this is one that, for some reason, the internet loves to hate. And just, for me, I'm sorry. I'm going to be really harsh about this movie, but I'm sorry. I've yet to see a single criticism of this movie that makes any sense. Well, that's not entirely true. I've seen one. I've seen one criticism that makes sense. I kind of disagree with it, but I see where they're coming from. And like I said, that one actually makes a modicum of sense. Everything else I've seen, though, I'm going to get into specifics, of course, but it pretty much boils down to, did you watch the first 6 movies? Because if you did, that makes sense. You know? Like, I'll start off with the Leia scene. The one point I will concede with the Leia scene is it's filmed horribly, you know? But no one ever talks about the filming. They're talking about, oh, Leia can't do that. Yes, because how dare Rian Johnson address a plot point that was actually introduced in The Empire Strikes Back? What, did you think Leia could hear Luke shouting while she was enclosed in a moving spaceship who knows how many miles away from Bespin? But yeah, no. And also, here's the thing, because everyone's like, that's not how the Force works. The Force is plot hole spackle. It can do whatever the writers want it to. You know, why do you think it conceived the Force itself purely conceived a child? God, the more I think about it, the more I hate the Phantom Menace. But anyway, that brings me up to something else. You know, the big issue people seem to have with this movie is the characterization of Luke and the whole Luke would never nonsense when he felt his nephew was taken over by the dark side and how he considered striking him down but never actually did. Yeah, Luke would never. Like when he went hunting down R2 without telling anyone what he was doing or where he was going. Or when, while escaping Imperial stormtroopers, he found a way to hold them at bay, but also destroyed his only means of escape. Or when he ignored a return to base order and went out investigating on his own. Or when he abandoned his training to go rescue his friends and spring an obvious trap. Or when Vader and the Emperor knew how Luke operated and repeatedly preyed on that, goading him into attacking. Luke has constantly made rash, impetuous, hasty decisions without thinking them through. And here's the thing too, you know, people are like, Luke struck down Vader, this shouldn't be an issue anymore. Except here's the thing, that's not how temptation works. Because you beat it once doesn't mean you beat it. It means you beat it once. You know, it's a repeated, it's something you constantly have to struggle with. And again, with the whole Luke would never when he considered striking down his nephew, except this was also a plot point introduced in A New Hope. Or did people forget there's too much of his father in him? I know I'm really hung up on the Luke thing, but it's just, again, did you watch the first 6 movies? None of your criticisms make any sense. And furthermore, the message of this movie, everyone's like, oh, it's destroying the legacy of the originals with its let the past die message. Yes, Because when I make a movie telling a story, I always have my message said by the bad guys. No, the message is actually said by Yoda. We are what they grow beyond. You need to embrace the past, but you can't stay rooted in it. The past can be a starting point, but you need to grow beyond it. Which is something somehow people missed. Sorry, I'm getting really harsh on the naysayers of this movie, but this has been building up for a while. What else would I want to say? Everyone said Snoke was disappointing. I'm sorry, I stopped caring about Snoke as soon as we saw he wasn't a giant. He was just your bland, generic, big bad. Which was done really cleverly by setting up Kylo Ren is the true big bad. But aside from that, the cinematography is beautiful. This is one of the best looking Star Wars movies, and it's one of the best acted. The standouts being Adam Driver, who, after being whiny, rage-filled Anakin 2.0 in The Force Awakens, is actually a very nuanced character with his own struggles and his own arc. Daisy Ridley is really good, is another highlight of this movie. Laura Dern, Carrie Fisher, and honestly, I think for Mark Hamill, this is a career best. It's like, and here's the thing, too. When you look at this as a Star Wars movie, Rian Johnson delved deep into Star Wars. He got to the core of the Star Wars, whereas with the other sequels, J.J. Abrams only scratched the surface. And, well, there's one left, and I'm basic, so you should know what this one is. Number 1. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, really, again, I'm just speechless, What can I say that hasn't already been said? Again, good performances, one of the most iconic twists in film of all time, great action sequences, really subtle No, that's not what I want to go. I'm sorry. This one I just really love. I could gush about it any number of ways. I'm just not sure what way I want to go. Well, there is one thing. This movie has a very important lesson that is sadly very relevant to real life, and seeing that as a kid, it's kind of stuck with me, and especially now. I don't often bring real world events into my videos, but yeah, this is kind of a relevant lesson, especially now. The title, The Empire Strikes Back, and what happens in this movie. The Battle of Hoth, it's not a battle, it's an evacuation. Han and Leia, and Chewie and 3PO, spend most of this movie on the run from the Empire. Han is frozen in carbonite. Luke is physically and mentally scarred by Vader. This movie was the first movie to teach me the lesson that good doesn't always win. And yes, it ends on a very hopeful, optimistic note, but like I said, that is a lesson that has stuck with me. Especially now. Boy, but yeah, no, it's just... And I love the grandiose, operatic, Shakespearean storytelling of this movie. I think, along with The Last Jedi, this movie absolutely nails that. And it's one of the movies I've revisited the most in rewatching these. There's really not much more to say. And there you have it, my ranking for the Star Wars movies. What's yours? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. Share my video around. All of it helps my channel grow. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi, where you can support the channel, and you'll find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom, and may the Force be with you.